Hello, Uta here of Trans Widow, Uta Hagen channel and WordPress blog, utahagengrasswidow.wordpress.com. This is a ramble about what cross-sex ideating men say, which they themselves aren't realizing disproves all of their claims. It's really remarkable. First, this is a salvia. Isn't that a great color? It doesn't smell that good. These are all kind of non-bouquet flowers. And the reason for not really putting the anemones in the bouquet at this point is that the stems tend to be so short, and then they have branching off stems which have buds on them. So maybe I'll cut a nice bouquet later on when more are blooming. This is an allium related to onions, and therefore it's good to put outside the fence because the deer and the woodchucks don't eat it. And then mint is starting to bloom in my front yard where I have 7 kinds of mint instead of a grass. And this is a daylily. Daylilies only last for a day, and so they typically don't go into bouquets. So I'm going to just read a quote from a detransitioner that I just discovered. She is Nadine Alton, and I can't think of her channel name, but if you put in Nadine detransitioner to the YouTube search line, you will probably find her channel. And she had to switch over to YouTube because of the harassment and defamation that she was getting just for telling her story on TikTok. She said, "It was magical thinking. I was basically delusional, and that delusion was encouraged by the community and the medical establishment." And the reason I really want to expose what some of these cross-sex ideating men are saying when they are trying to describe their feelings and when they are dictating their diagnosis to the therapist, psychologist, and they're looking to alter their bodies, and they're looking to justify it by the use of exactly young women like Nadine. And what I'm going to examine today is a video that I had put on my community post. So if you go to that a playlist, section, if you click on the Uta Hagen down here or Trans Widow Uta Hagen down here, and then you'll get all those choices. And the community post, the most recent one, is the link to the video that I'm going to just have a reaction to here. I suppose it would be better if I figured out the technology to have it somehow in the screen, but I just want to point out certain things to you, and then you can find the link on the community post and watch it yourself. This is a so-called debate between the feminist, lesbian feminist academic who is a professor of philosophy, Kathleen Stock. She was drummed out of her position at the University of Sussex a few months ago, I believe. And so she's the author of the book Material Girls, and it goes into our objections, all of the women of the world who are objecting to men saying that they're women and saying that they have the same rights as we do as a sex class. And the man that she was debating was formerly called Donald McCloskey. He's a professor of, I think, English and history and economics or something. He's often talking about economics. Um, that's, what you'll find if you do a search. There's also a kind of interesting and enlightening exchange that Professor McCloskey has posted. If you just Google Deirdre McCloskey and the author J. Michael Bailey, he wrote The Man Who Would Be Queen. It's uh, kind of a crazy narrative where he's writing about a handful of cross-sex ideating young men. And Deirdre McCloskey had big objections to it and actually reported the psychologist J. Michael Bailey to the Illinois Board of Psychologists, or whatever it's called, trying to get him unlicensed. And while in some way it might be that could be the only point of agreement that I might have with Professor McCloskey, is that, J. Michael Bailey might not really be helping people. But probably we have a lot of different details in our reasoning. So, McCloskey, who tells us that he was captain of his football team in high school and he enjoyed being a man, now says, I think I pass now. And this is just magical thinking. It just really is. And Kathleen Stock was very polite to him and didn't say, yeah, we don't think you pass. And it's just kind of interesting because there's this magical thinking about I pass, people think I'm a woman, people are treating me like a woman, they say to themselves. But since all of this is so enforced, of course, we're just not pointing the finger or outing this man for what he is, out of pressure, out of social pressure, and I guess politeness. And he says there was a time when I didn't pass. Now, he has a huge comb over, and I would imagine that perhaps it was a factor in his decision at the age of 53 to decide that he's going to name himself Deirdre and all this, and cause a huge change in his decades-long marriage. And his children don't talk to him, and he blames it all on right-wingers and Christians and all kinds of others. But the way he treated Kathleen Stock was so dismissive and patronizing that I can just imagine why his children don't talk to him, or his ex-wife. But he says, I want to be viewed as a woman. And then he says, this is where he starts contradicting himself constantly. He starts off by saying, well, I do believe in biology. I talk about X and XX and XY. But then a few sentences later, he says, I wish the bastards would stop saying XY, XY, XY. It's so irritating. Oh, and then there's some kind of, he's got this magical thinking regarding whether we walk around in the world experiencing reality or whether we kind of create our own fiction. And he's posing that we create our own fictions of our lives. And everybody does that, and that is reality. And I think that it was difficult for Kathleen Stock to kind of catch up with this. because he kept contradicting himself and he kept making claims that we know are false, such as that there are so few detransitioners. This is just not happening like like it's being maintained. Or he also said that he thinks it's a big myth and legend that men are getting into the women's prisons and causing pregnancies and engaging in criminal behavior. Uh, and then this is this other sort of magical thinking. Maybe in some future, uh, the, it's like it isn't, it's even not grammatical, but it's something like some amazing future biology. Maybe in some future amazing biology, you would be able to change your genes to the opposite. I don't know. Now, why is someone who has a PhD in, or has maybe more than one PhD, saying a prediction that we could possibly have the future capacity to change people's genes from one sex to the other? And then, Kathleen Stock is just sort of sitting there, like shaking her head, but being very, very polite and not saying, no, we won't be able to do that. We just won't. So now you can hear it from me. Then he goes into this reverie about, well, it's just like wanting to be a woman when you're a man is just like someone wanting to be a lawyer who has to go through a process and then take the bar exam and then they'll be a lawyer. And on that one, at least Kathleen Stock did say, I don't think that you can equate the two. She said, I think that is an inappropriate analogy. McCloskey makes a lot of statements that are simply conjectures, and I know this very well from my ex-husband, Nettie. This is constant. And he made this comment about Mitchfest, which was this long time ago, like late 1970s, music festival for women. And he made this claim that the women running Mitchfest were going around making men that they suspected were men, like take down their skirt or their pants or whatever and reveal. I don't know what to make of that. The Dana Rivers is a criminal who murdered two lesbians and the son of one of them, the adopted son, over in Oakland, California, and was recently convicted to life imprisonment. He starts making conjecture about the tennis players, about Venus and Serena Williams, and rightfully so, Kathleen Stock points out that they actually were beaten by a rather low-ranked man. And then he keeps on saying it's not irreversible. That makes absolutely no sense. If you have body parts cut off, that's irreversible. This is making no sense. Then he goes into something saying, well, you could choose to re-identify as your biological sex and then just wear the clothes of that. But he is not recognizing that you can never have those body parts back. This is this magical world that he lives in. I think he's in his 70s. And it was, he did his change, if he's had the surgeries, he said, in 1995, which is 1 year before Nettie. Oh God! And he's saying I don't think there's any controversy about it, and brings up a 2-year-old child who is saying when like a girl saying, "Oh, well, when am I going to have my penis grow?" or something like that, and he brings this up, and Kathleen Stock rightfully contradicts him and says, if you know child development, you know that children don't have the language to be saying something that is going to persist all through their life. And so this is this thing that these men do. They remake their own childhoods. Now, he claims he had some feeling of not wanting to be a boy when he was 11. And so even he doesn't claim that it was since earliest childhood. Um, oh gosh, and he makes up his own numbers. He says 1 in every 400 persons is uh, trans. He calls them gender crossers. He's making up his own name here. Um, and he says understanding is not the issue. It is not a theorem. So, this is this mysticism and this belief that I'm a mystical being. I'm specially sacred and holy if I believe that I'm the opposite sex, if I believe I'm a woman. And I especially think with the dudes who are in that age bracket, who were born in, say, the late 40s or the 50s. I really think that they um, really are operating on this idea that they're especially heroic because women have been an oppressed class and now they're identifying as a woman. I know that Nettie had that. And he just says it's a social construction. Uh, I didn't believe I was a woman. And then he claims that it's journalistic fiction, that the wrong, I was born in the wrong body narrative. But this narrative is promoted all over social media. And this, I'm just blah, 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 blah. I'm like this because I kind of spent my day researching this guy, and he reminds me of the older brother of Nettie. Nettie never had an older brother, but and then he says, "But look, dear," he keeps on calling Kathleen Stock dear. It is so patronizing. Uh, Many decisions we make are irreversible, and then he conflates uh, decisions not to have books in the home so the children don't develop really high intellectual, logical thinking capacities. He compares that as an irreversible decision and conflates it with making an irreversible decision to have body parts stuck on or taken off. Um, uh, he compared, I'm just, uh, so, and then they go into this thing about whether or not the state should be involved. And the thing is, I believe that Kathleen Stock should have brought up the other malpractice scandals like lobotomies and thalidomide, because the state does get involved when there is medical malpractice going on and the doctors are not admitting this is malpractice. Uh, it's just, yeah. Oh, he says, mm. Oh, he brings up the suicide narrative. It's really, he keeps on saying, oh, that narrative isn't any good. That's journalistic fiction to say we feel like we're in the wrong body. It's much more complicated than that. But then he brings up the fiction, the journalistic fiction of the suicide narrative. And at the end, Kathleen Stock is finally sort of realizing that he's going to keep distracting and conflating and making inept, false comparisons. and and now I am going to end it, and I am going to go back outside and look for the butterflies coming to these pollinator flowers. Be well always in mind and body. And just to be sure, I think you can hear the frustration in my voice. Be sure that you just take this illogic, this nonsense, and learn how to cite exact studies with the names of the names and the dates of the studies, like Cecilia Dane, who was at the Karolinska Institute, 2011. They found that the suicide rate was 40 times higher in natal females who had had these surgeries and treatments, and they found that it was 18 times higher in the natal males. A recent Danish study found that the suicide rate, and this is just going only, I think, 6 years post the treatments, the suicide rate was double. So Denmark is going to have to start looking into what is it going to do? Is it going to reverse the policies about this, like Sweden and Norway? I really think that when we have this discussion about what entity should be regulating this, take a look at the most progressive sort of socialist countries in the world, Sweden, Finland, and Norway. They've both changed this. This McCloskey dude just doesn't cut it. So once again, enjoy the flowers. Take yourself outside, prepare your arguments, be informed, but don't let it make you crazy.